and welcome back to the Star Wars Expanded Universe, narrated by Disney or Lucasfilm. Whatever way you slice it. Legends. I have a double for you today. First, we have The Force Unleashed video game novelization comic. There was nothing new added here, except for maybe like one panel. And when you have the video game, why not just play the video game? And the same applies with the novelization. I mean, there's some extra parts here or there from Juno's perspective. We get to be in her thoughts and learn a little bit more about her. Of course, there's a little bit of additional dialogue because it's a novel. But there's nothing of substance added from the novel that you wouldn't get from the video game. So, if you're like Matt Wilkins and you don't like video games, the novelization is fine for getting the story of the game. But if you like playing video games, or you're not a dad who doesn't have any time for video games, or you're a dad that does find time, just play the game. Because you'll not only get to experience the story, but you also get to have fun exploring and fighting yourself. That's what I recommend anyway. We'll see if that changes with The Force Unleashed 2, because I think The Force Unleashed 2 actually adds stuff in the novel. So the novel might actually be better than the not so highly looked upon sequel game. But that's for another time. What can I say about this game that people don't know about? This game has quite a history for what it's done for the future of Star Wars. I mean, love it, hate it. Disney took over. We got Rebels. Season 7 of the Clone Wars. Of course, Filoni is responsible for Clone Wars and all that, but if you like Maul in those shows, or at least the voice work, that's all thanks to Sam Witwer, who is also the voice of Starkiller. He's actually Starkiller first, because I think TCW came out the same year that this game did, but Maul wasn't introduced till season 3 or season 4. So, it's really crazy to think how that voice actor would transcend into other things, and also being he does a good Palpatine. He's the voice of Palpatine in this game, and he is also the son in that Mortis arc. So he's a really good voice actor, and props to him, and may he continue to get work. Good for him. But yeah, what can I say that you don't know if you're a Star Wars fan? I mean, like, even I'm biased with this game because before I even knew what the Expanded Universe was, I knew about this game. My dad had it on the PlayStation 3, so I would play it, and it was fun, and other people would have it, and I'd play it there too, and especially the Vader level. I mean, playing as Vader, I mean, that's just awesome, right? Of course, then they nerf you right after because you have to gain back up your power as Starkiller. But you are the secret apprentice of Darth Vader, right? Like, we have the beginning of the game where we learn how it came into being in Vader's radar and being taken under. And it's interesting. I would have a problem with, I guess, Vader having a secret apprentice all this time that we didn't know about. If the twist later on in the game, I mean, it's an old game. I'm going to say it, because Vader had no intention, or if he did, it's subtle enough to where it switched. Maybe Vader, when he saved or allowed Starkiller to live, really planned on having an apprentice to take down the Emperor. But the Emperor has eyes and ears everywhere. He found out the truth. And he said, oh, you can keep him alive, but we're going to use him for our future needs if need be. You know, that's just speculation, but we learn that it's all a ploy. Everything that he's been doing from the start of the game is all fake. You know, he's defeating these Jedi Masters just to know if he can be up to the task. But then we learn that all this was just because we have a bunch of different rebel factions. They're all separate planets, separate systems. They have rebellions growing, but there's no united front, right? They can't really be a successful military force if it's just one planet against an entire empire that spans multiple systems. So Starkiller, Galen Merrick, finally forms that rebellion, gets all the different rebellion sects that are growing right now, and meshes them into one, the Rebel Alliance. But of course, that's what Vader wanted. That's what Palpatine wanted. They wanted to get all the people from different parts of the galaxy that were rising up against them, building up resistance, and wanted to crush them in one quick move. They aren't successful. Galen turns to the good side, tries to stop them, and ends up being the inspiration for or his family's symbol ends up being the crest that they use for the rebellion brand, I guess. But overall, it's decent. I don't think this story is... I used to think this story was fantastic. Going through it as an adult, it's fun. I don't think it's a bad story, but it's by far from this masterpiece or anything. It's not. It's okay. It's fine. I like Ramcoda. I like the idea of Ramcoda not liking clones, so used his own separate militia, and that's why he survived Order 66. I like the parallels that we kind of get if you think about Vader grooming Starkiller and juxtaposition with Luke. I think that's kind of interesting because he never got to have a son. But at the same time, does he really care about Starkiller? Probably not. But is there a little bit of hint of there or something? You know, you can kind of put stuff in there yourself. I want to go back to novelization for a second because I want to say the one thing of value that the novelization did was destroy any EU hater arguments. Now, no, we can't stretch things. Galen is a very powerful Force user, and there's no denying that. More powerful than he probably should be, but the novelization does tone down a lot of the things. So like when he fights the Jedi Masters like Shakti, he's struggling, he's fearful, he's not gonna succeed, and then he does. Whereas in a video game, just like gotta take her out, gone, right? But it makes it more of a struggle in his mind anyway. So that way you can be like, oh, so he's not this powerhouse who can just defeat anyone. No, he does struggle. Or when he blocks the Palpatine's, lightning. Yeah, that's still a powerful feat. There's no way around that. But the book says he was in extreme pain while that was going on. Like his entire body was being electrocuted while blocking the lightning. So it doesn't change the fact of necessarily of how powerful he is, but it does put things in his perspective. So you're not like, oh, he's just a superhuman. Like, no, he was in intense pain there. He just endured it for the sake of the people he cared about. And then there's also the most infamous one, the Star Destroyer being pulled down. In the game, it does look like he's just pulling the Star Destroyer down. In the novelization, something had already happened to the Star Destroyer. It was already falling. All Starkiller did in the novelization was direct it in his direction, which is still a powerful feat, but it's less impressive than just pulling one that isn't broken your direction. Like, it was already falling down. It was gonna hit, but he moved it his direction. So stuff like that helps make it more tangible within the Star Wars expanded universe, and just Star Wars in general. Makes it more plausible, though he still is extremely powerful. Galen and Juno, It's not bad, not good. It's not particularly a very strong romance that I think was well developed, not even in novelization. Um, but it is what it is. Um, I do also want to mention before I move on to the next story I want to talk about, if we're going to include TCW's canon, not that I care because I'm not going to watch or read canon, why isn't The Force Unleashed? Because George Lucas had just as much involvement, if not more, on The Force Unleashed. If we're going by, whoa, George Lucas helped with the production of TCW, well then this should be part of the canon, because George Lucas worked on it. Hell, you gotta put droids in there now. And Ewoks. Maybe Ewoks less so, but droids, yes. But it's arbitrary. Just say you like TCW, that's why you wanted to keep it. Don't lie and say it's because of how much George was involved. Because he was involved here. Anyway. Overall, it's a very fun game. It's a very decent story in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. And I do think it's worth your time. Novelization or video game. Comic, I think, is redundant. But you can get it if you want to. On to the second part of my review, which is Han Solo's Revenge, the second book in Brian Dailey's trilogy. Also, correction to make. I've been saying this, I guess, for years now. The first two books, at least. I don't know about the third one, but the first two books in the Brian Dailey trilogy are in 1979. So not an 80s trilogy. Perhaps the last book was in the 80s. I'm not sure. But the first two books, or I'm assuming it took a bit of time to write those. So I'm going to say the first two, 1979. Last one, 1980. But we'll see if I'm wrong about that. Han Solo and Chewbacca are down on luck because the Falcon is having issues and they're low on money again. They possibly get a job with these people who are asking them to deliver something, but they're not allowed to see what. They find out that they're about to transport a bunch of slaves, and Chewie, obviously, and Han, which we learn about from other books, like the A.C. Crispin ones, that he's very against slavery. He'll do a lot of, kind of immoral things, but slavery is not one of them. So he's very against that, and he wants revenge for trying to be tricked into that. And he also wants revenge because he wants to get paid. He hasn't gotten paid, and he doesn't like being screwed over. So it starts this whole adventure. There's a lot of plot twists and stuff. This is also where we get introduced to the wonderful and fun Western-like villain, Galandro. Galandro could put Cad Bane to shame with how cool he is. Galandro's not the biggest part. He kind of shows up near the end of this book. He'll be a bigger part of the finale to these books, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, oh man, it was a lot of fun. It's a bit slower, I think, than the first book. But I think overall, it's a really fun read. Just like the first Brian Dailey book is. And rereading it again, I still love it. I still love Brian Dailey's work. I don't know if I put it above A.C. Crispin's, but I do think they're really good. And I highly recommend it. I mean, it's only like 100-something pages, so I don't want to spoil it all, but it is well worth your time. Well, that's why I wanted to put these in two, because I figured I didn't have too much to say. So, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing helps it a ton. And I'll see you next time with The Force Unleashed 2. Till then, guys, may the Force be with you.